Hello, everybody. I'm Jay. He's Maddie, and this is Yankee and The Brit. And we're continuing our division by division breakdown of the NFL offseason needs. And today, we're going to finish out the AFC with the AFC West. And we might as well just start with the top of the division with the AFC champion, Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, start the end with the champions of the AFC, and they've had a weird offseason so far. KC,
Yeah,
very strange.
It was like, well, we couldn't block anybody in the Super Bowl, so fuck it, let's double down and just get rid of the whole offensive line and see if we can make it a little harder on Patrick Mahomes because the games become too easy for him or something. I don't know what they're doing.
It's kind of like we absolutely capitulated in the Super Bowl because we couldn't block. So let's get rid of our only two guys who were missing from the offensive line that weren't able to block, you know? So we are, of course, talking about Fisher and Swartz being cut.
And Fisher's the one that caught me. Fisher's the one that really caught me because it's your quarterback's blind side.
Yeah, and Swartz had been injured a lot that season. Swartz had already missed 10 games, where Fisher only missed the Super Bowl. I think it just kind of means they're not confident in the injuries coming back. And Fisher was quite a big cap hit if you're not confident in the injuries coming back in a season where the cap's getting adjusted all the time.
Even though I just seen, and now my numbers aren't updated because I couldn't find the new cap numbers yet.
Yeah.
Or because I don't know if they got it done or just talking about it. But because of that 10-year contract, they're already doing that forced negotiation or whatever of Patrick Mahomes, and they're turning his base salary into a bonus so they can spread it out over the rest of that 9-year, 10-year contract. So they're already freeing up cap space. And before they did this, they had like 18 million, but that's not a lot on the scheme that Robinson and Watkins could leave. So you're going to have to figure out what to do with your wide receivers. And they could lose, Wilson. They're going to lose Sorensen probably. Breland could be gone, so they're secondary. Not that they had the world's best secondary, but they were way better than they were the year before. And now you're like back to square one. I don't know what they're going to do. I just know that they put all their money in Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and they're stuck with like some bad contracts on the defense. They're not the worst contracts I've ever seen, but they're not the best either. So that's something that they're just going to have to figure out. But they did an amazing job of re-signing all these guys and still having more cap room than I thought they would.
Yeah.
Because, I know it's not a great comparison, but weren't the Saints 100 million over going in? And I'm not even joking, like 100 million over.
Yeah.
And a team that was just in the Super Bowl has 18 million now and probably 25 to 30 with the restructuring of Patrick Mahomes. I just don't know how that's going to land.
Yeah, I remember sitting down to do this today and thinking, oh, the Chiefs are going to be a boring one. We'll just zip through this one. And then I got more and more into it and I was like, oh, it's a bit weak. Like, you think of a dynasty, and this is proving why dynasties are hard to set up in the NFL in a cap-based sport. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. They haven't gone wrong yet. The thing about the offensive line is I kind of trust Andy Reid and the KC front office to kind of know what they're doing with that. I think it seems strange to get rid of it. And after the Super Bowl performance, it seems strange to get rid of those two guys. But Andy Reid has always believed in depth at the offensive line. And there's two players coming back in Lucas Niang and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. A big shout out to Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, by the way, for going and working on the front line. That's why he opted out this season. So good work, Laurent. And they're coming back. So maybe he thinks like, oh, these guys can fill in, and Fisher and Schwartz are kind of injury risks and not right for the position anymore.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, and if you've been watching our videos, you've heard this way too many times, so I'm sorry. There's a lot of guards in free agency out there. There's a lot, like some tackles, more than you ever see, that decent tackles. You know what I mean? Out on Trent Williams, some top guys too. Also, I think Fisher's going to be one of those top guys, even though his age and health. I think you're going to not that they're going to break the bank, but you're going to see those left tackles getting some pretty good money, probably on one-year deals. But I also think there's some guys out there, if you are trying to penny pinch, that can play right guard. I would not try him at left guard, but Tom Compton's out there. Tom Compton, you could probably get for $5 million a year, and he would be way better than Remmers was on that line. There's a reason why Remmers went from Minnesota to Carolina to Minnesota to the Kansas City. There's a reason, and you took a guy who could barely play guard, moved him to right tackle, which he did all right because of Patrick Mahomes saving him. But then in the Super Bowl, you moved him to left tackle.
Yeah, and then there's a lot in the draft as well. There's a decent amount of, if you can get him some of those veteran guys just to maybe plug some holes, there's also a lot of offensive linemen lying about in the draft, and they're picking 31st overall, which is a great place to take an O-lineman. That's where you get decent value for O-linemen and places like that. So I've got Elijah Vera-Tucker, who's an offensive lineman from USC, and Dylan Roddens, who's an offensive lineman from North Dakota State. And they're both strong guys. I think Roddens, they could probably take a bit later on if they wanted to trade back to one of the top guys in the second round, because there's not a lot about him, and he's coming out of North Dakota State. But he's a quick kind of trick play kind of offensive lineman where he moves well across the offensive line and comes out, runs that little J route to get to the outside and block on the outside, coming from guard or center and coming out to the outside to block. And that'll work well in the KC offense.
Yeah, KC likes to pull their guards, and they like to do a lot of zone running at times. So you need athletic linemen. That's why, for me, I was thinking Jackson Carman would be good on the offensive line. I also thought if you don't go offensive line, because let's say the guy you want isn't there or the value isn't right for you, I thought you could always go with D tackle Nixon also. Yeah. He would be good in the middle, give them some more, depth at their line. Otherwise, if you're just out for best player available and he's still sitting there, which I think is a shot, and you need help on the defense, it'd be linebacker Nick Bolton. But I think offensive line is their biggest need. But oddly, for a team who was in a Super Bowl, they do have enough holes to fill that they don't have to just go, we need an offensive line. Plus, again, especially since they're a contender, I'd almost like to see them grab some 1 or 2 year veterans on the offensive line and then draft depth. And if one of those guys beat them out in training camp as a rookie, great, start them. But if not, give them that year so that next year you're not in the same position too, because Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady can fix a multitude of sins on your offensive line just by their quick release. And then beyond the offensive linemen, again, a lot of teams, I think they need safety. We could go through and list all the Kenny Vaccaro, Anthony Smith, or Anthony Harris, all that stuff. But people who have listened to us already know that it's out there. But like I said, you want to protect your quarterback, but I'm not sure you want to start a rookie. So bring in some depth, bring in some veterans, let them guys battle it out, put your best 5 guys out there, and let Patrick Mahomes be the guy to fix some of the deficiencies on the offensive line. Yeah. Well, you have to make your team better because, again, for me, with their defense as weak as it had been at times, losing Sorensen's going to be big. But like we talked about, a lot of safeties. But I know you have some feelings on their offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line is something that can definitely be fixed with veterans, and then if you have some rookies in behind them, then that'll definitely. And Andy Reid is a guy who's always talked about wanting depth at O-line, which is why I think they'll target O-line in the draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see them just go get some playmakers on defense either. And a guy that I'm going to be mentioning later in the podcast for another team who I think the Raiders should take, but may fall way past the Raiders and down to KC, is Azeez Ojulari, the linebacker from Georgia, who can kind of linebackers, I think, are going to be some of the new playmakers. I think defensive schemes are going to become more college, where the linebacker is a bigger game player and he's big in the pass rush as well as in defense. And Azeez just blows guys up. So I think he's a really good kind of guy, and hopefully hopefully they won't take him if you're looking forward to seeing the Kansas City Chiefs lose. But hopefully for Casey, a guy like that could fall to them, and then they can take. There are a lot of offensive linemen that they can possibly take in the second round as well.
Yeah, it's a new NFL. If your linebackers cannot move sideline to sideline,
yeah,
they ain't be in the NFL anymore. You don't just do thumpers anymore. Your guys have to be able to cover. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of
super playmakers. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're usually them or a safety, but usually your middle linebackers, the guy who's the quarterback on the field, talking to the coach, listening, and you got to have smart, athletic, fast guys at your linebacker core, and they can make up for some run deficiencies or, some pass deficiencies if you have the right linebackers. Where I definitely agree with you that the NFL is changing that way, and they're so much more important than casual fans give them credit for.
Yeah, definitely. And they're going to be big playmakers. And there's somebody who, they're a position that I think I'm going to kind of talk about a lot throughout the podcast, the linebackers, mainly because there's so many good linebackers in this class, like Xavier Collins. Micah Parsons is going to be the number one linebacker off the board. Great playmaker. Isaiah Simmons from last year as well. But there's not a lot of good defensive linemen who are amazing playmakers. So linebacker is a place where you can make up for that. A team that could definitely use some defensive help is the Las Vegas Raiders. And yes, that is the Las Vegas Raiders. When we say Oakland later on in this.
I do it all the time, so it's fine.
We know we're going to say Oakland at some point, but no, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. And their defense just needs help.
I'm sure I'll call LA San Diego before it's over, too.
Yeah, same as well. Their defense just needs help. I've just got written in big capital letters, fix the secondary. Is what I've got.
Yeah, because for their needs, I got guard, offensive tackle, corner, edge, wide receiver, and defensive tackle. So, I think
which is
and they do have some defense or decent defense, or they do have some decent wide receivers.
Yeah,
they got Hunter Renfrow, they got Ruggs, but they do got Aguilar and Jones, who they need to re-sign or replace. I just think that they're another team that doesn't have a ton of cap space, doesn't have super glaring holes, but they do have some holes that they need to fix. But I do think easily fixable with their draft or free agency is the wide receivers. And here it comes. I've said his name before. The perfect landing spot for Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah,
or if you're lucky enough in the draft, Devontae Smith. I mean, but Juju next to Ruggs, and if you can bring back Aguilar and you already have Edwards, I think that's a stout receiving core.
Yeah, definitely with Derek Carr at QB as well. That would be an absolute fire offense that they've got on the field there. I think that they're good enough at wide receiver to perhaps not go in. If Juju Smith-Schuster comes available on the free agent market, which it kind of looks like he's going to, then that's a guy that you can definitely go for. I wouldn't like trade for him. I wouldn't give anything away for him, but he would be a great second receiver to run those little intermediate routes, short routes, while you have Ruggs and Aguilar belting down the field to kind of go make those big plays. I think their secondary is where they need the most help. They've had not a great secondary for quite a long time. So in the last 3 seasons, they were 32nd in 2008. 32nd in 2018 and 2019, according to PFF, and 28th in 2020, according to PFF, in their secondary. And that is not good enough. And there are some decent players that are available in the secondary, especially because they're getting rid of LaMarcus Joyner. Now, LaMarcus Joyner is going to save them $8.7 million to cut. And they'll probably let Darryl Worley walk as well, because every time he played, he looked like a bit of a liability. In my eyes, he's played for the Cowboys, so maybe I just have some deep-seated hatred against the guy, because anybody out of the Cowboys secondary can't play secondary, clearly. But that'll give them some cap room to go after Sherman, Brian Poole, or Marcus Williams to fix up a safety position.
Well, speaking of their secondary, instead of, because we all know they need a safety and we don't want to go through all the names again, I got a perfect name for them that we have not used. Tashawn Gibson. And that's only because he will fit that defensive Raider scheme perfectly. And the fact is, yes, they need help in that secondary, but we were talking about linebackers that can help with that too. I think Josh Bynes and John Simmons could really help just because they'll fit the scheme. They could help that on the pass rush and on coverage, which will help your secondary and your defensive line. And then again, when we were just one last thing I forgot to put out there when we were talking about their offense is Josh Jacobs is a beast at the running back. And I might be a little biased, but the reason I love this kid is this is a kid who was living in his car with his family before getting drafted to the NFL. So he brings that energy to the field when he plays. So I think their offense will be okay. I think it's going to be a lot about the defense. It's going to, the defense is where they're going to have to focus more because like we were just talking, running back, receiver, they'll be okay. Derek Carr, they'll be okay. They just need to put they need some playmakers on the defense. They need to help that secondary, and you can always improve an offense, but I'm not so worried about their offense as I am their defense.
Yeah, I think everybody's quite worried about their defense. In the draft, they're picking 17th overall. So if they pick the way that I want them to pick, then Aziz Julier, I said it perfectly in the first run through. Aziz Ajuliari is probably going to be not there for the Chiefs. He'll almost definitely be there for the Ravens. Or even if they're lucky, then Xavier Collins is going to be there. And Xavier Collins is a guy I've been very, very excited about in previous podcasts. The guy is an absolute baller, serious playmaker, and the kind of guy you need when your defense is struggling. Just that kind of guy who looks like he could come straight into the NFL, and as long as you teach him where to stand, then you just tell him to set off and go. Like he's that kind of guy.
Yeah, I had them in the draft either taking Jaleel Phillips, defensive lineman, Micah Parsons, sorry. And then
if Micah Parsons falls to them, then many teams have missed out on the guy.
It's just how I did my mock.
Yeah.
And then I also, if he's there, it's not necessarily a need, but the theory of you never pass up a great talent, you got to take wide receiver Devon Smith. I can't even
Devontae Smith. Here we go.
Yes, thank you.
We've both got it.
Yeah. But if he's there, you have to take him. Even as a Vikings fan, not that he'll be there, but we have Thielen and Jefferson. If he's sitting there when we draft, you have to take this kid because he could change the world for your offense if you just watched his skill set. Well, watching Alabama,
I think there are way too many teams above them where if they miss out on Devontae Smith, then the guys are getting fired, including Minnesota. Arizona would probably take him. They're picking 16th.
I agree. I just think if there's a way that how nobody expected Jefferson to fall to the 20s.
Yeah. If there's a way the guy falls,
happens, I don't care if he's a need or not. You have to take him, and it's kind of like I know he's a Hall of Fame, going to be a Hall of Famer, but you didn't know what Aaron Rodgers necessarily was going to be when you drafted him, and Favre needed a lot of help. But the kid you thought was the best player in the draft dropped to 24. You got to take him.
Oh, pick the best guy on the board.
Right, especially in the late parts of the draft. But I don't care who you are, unless you're in the top 10. If you let Smith go past you, you're probably going to regret it.
There are only a few teams that would pick needs over just the best guy on the board. Dallas will pick the best guy on the board. That's what Jerry likes to just get the flashiest guy he can possibly see. I reckon Micah Parsons isn't going to go past Dallas, probably not going to go past the Giants. Devontae Smith is probably the same, won't go past Dallas, won't go past the Giants. San Francisco is still up there. If he manages to fall through them, there are going to be some guys that are thinking, and he plays as well as we think he's going to. Now, NFL scouts might have assessed him and thought, he's not the right guy. He's not the college game. He's running at Alabama where he's not getting a lot of double coverage because everybody else is having to be covered as well. And if you just body him up, then it would work. But I just think
you can move him
many
all
people
over
that go
the field, though. You can even line him up at running back. You can swing routes. That's just a kid, I think, that
he's a great fit for the Raiders.
And if you have another receiver, right, that they're worried about, how do you worry about both of them? And the fact that you can get a guy like him in space and he can make something happen like one of the elite running backs, you know, it's kind of like the talent level.
He's a great fit. Great fit for the Raiders if he falls to them. I just don't see him. I just don't see him falling that far. There's too many guys who need wide receivers.
I've done like 10 mock drafts in my head, one on paper. But you know how you go back through and you look and you go, what if they did this? What if they did that? It's so weird because of free agency. I keep in my head going, well, they're probably going to fix this there, so maybe they'll move here. And that's what I think is going to make this off season so much fun is what did they fix in free agency? Well, I know we called this last week like bloodbath week or massacre week, depending who you were watching. But I really think it's starting tomorrow, the week leading up to the
where they just
first days. Because what people are going to do is go, oh, let's say just using a guy in the division. Let's say somebody says, oh, I'm going to sign Hunter Henry. Well, now I got to cut somebody to fit him in.
There'll be plenty of guy. Hey, the Raiders could go get Hunter Henry. That would be a good fit for them too. They've already got their tight end in.
You can never have too many. Waller.
It's kind of Waller. Yeah. There's too many good tight ends.
That's another guy with an amazing story from addiction to top talent. I love his story. But all right, Maddie, I think we hit it. Thanks everybody for checking us out. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, blah, 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 blah. All right, guys. Thanks for checking us out. One world, one love. Deuces.
Cheerio.